Hi, this is Starkey Sower. Welcome again to another Plus Program training series. Today's topic is Foundations for Health, Vitamins and Minerals, and this is part 2. So we're going to do a real quick review, so to speak, of what we did in the first segment, just in case you guys didn't actually tune into that. So number one, we're going to talk about different types of nutrients. And so when we look at nutrients, a couple clear things. We definitely know that there's two different types of nutrients. There's macronutrients and there's micronutrients. So those macronutrients are proteins, fats, and carbohydrates. And you might be thinking, I already know what those are. I'm good on that. Definitely simple things. Proteins or foods are typically like things such as meats and maybe eggs, nuts, and seeds. And then when it comes to carbohydrates, they're going to be like root vegetables like potatoes and maybe starches like pasta, things of that nature. And then fats, of course, would be like olive oil, salad dressing, and maybe avocados, kind of give you a little round idea about them. Then there's also micronutrients. And the micronutrients are vitamins and minerals. And vitamins and minerals activate the body to be able to use the macronutrients, so to speak, into the system. So you got to have the micronutrients that help to activate the body to use the macronutrients. Without the two of those together, it's just not going to work. All right, so let's do a quick review on some micronutrients. First off the bat, vitamins. Ultimately, vitamins are organic compounds. Those organic compounds have different types of carbon structures and things with them. And there's roughly about 14 different vitamins that are essential. So what does it mean to be essential? Without essential, essential means that you have to have them. Without them, your body's going to have a nutrient deficiency symptom and or disease. All right, within those 14 vitamins and minerals, there's a couple different types. There's what we call fat soluble, and there's also water soluble in those categories. All right, so looking at minerals, they're inorganic compounds. As inorganic compounds, that basically means that they kind of stay themselves. They don't change. They might get integrated into different things along the way, but they ultimately come back to being what we call an inorganic compound when it's all over. About 15 of these specific minerals that our body needs, and without them, we have nutrient deficiency symptoms and or possibly disease. So then we look specifically at some of the functions of those particular elements. Well, we were looking at vitamins, specifically some of the functions acts as a hormone, an antioxidant, also as a coenzyme. When we look at the minerals, a couple different things, structurally components such as like the bone matrix. The other thing is water balance. Ultimately, specifically when it comes to sodium, potassium, and phosphorus and chloride, it kind of holds the water and moves it around in the right particular areas in the body. And then we also think of immune function when we think of zinc, as well as selenium. So it kind of maybe gives you a little bit of a foundation if you didn't see the first segment, but let's kind of push on and let's definitely look at a couple issues when it comes to vitamins and minerals or those micronutrients. All right, so specifically when we look at micronutrients, where do we get them? Ultimately, we get them from foods, right? As we were saying in the first one, our bodies are dependent on our food supply. If we don't get the right types of foods, we're not going to get the nutrients that our body needs. And so whole foods becomes the number one goal to getting the vitamin and minerals into the system. Ultimately, a great way to make sure that you're doing that is make sure that you're getting unrefined foods, make sure that it's unprocessed, make sure that you're getting a good variety as well too. Very critical to getting different types of vitamins and minerals. Remember that certain foods maybe accentuate a certain type of vitamin as opposed to another different type of food. So we definitely want a variety as well too. So a lot of times we also look at what we call food fortification or enrichment programs as a source of getting the vitamins and minerals into our system. And the reason why is because in the United States and a lot of different countries, food refinement is a typical thing. So for instance, like if you take whole wheat and refine it down into white flour, ultimately what happens is we actually enrich back or actually nourish back or fortify back some of the vitamins that were lost. And so ultimately what happens is this food fortification program and enriching program has actually been a great way to be able to get nutrients into our system that maybe we're lacking. So a couple different things on that. When we look at it, for instance, back in the 1990s, we actually see that food fortification and enrichment programs were kind of adjusted a little bit. So enrichment means that you're actually adding some type of a substance back to food. Fortification means that you're actually adding what was originally lost. So let me kind of give you a little clear example here. Folic acid is what we call a specific B vitamin, and it was actually named folic acid because it comes from foliage. And so ultimately, foliage is a green compound. And so oftentimes people don't eat enough green compounds. So what we did was we started enriching what we call whole grain products or grain products with folic acid to make up for a nutrient deficiency that was in the United States population to help with neurotube defects and things of that nature. All right, so a little bit difference. The last thing is supplementation. Supplementation is another great way to ensure that we're getting enough nutrients into our system. So whole foods, nutrients specifically from Fortification and Enrichment, and also supplementation. So how do I know I'm getting enough? So there's what is established as the RDAs, the recommended dietary allowances. And these recommended dietary allowances were established to make sure that you get enough nutrients so you don't have a nutrient deficiency disease. Ultimately, they're what we call a good guideline, so to speak, to get enough nutrients into the system. All right, so there also is what we call tolerable upper limits, which is kind of like, hey, this is the safeguard. You don't technically want to go too much far above this when it comes to supplementation, foods, and fortification, because there seems to be possibly some dangers. So what does that look like? You look at vitamin C, roughly 75 to 90 milligrams is the RDA, but the upper tolerable limit, or the tolerable upper limit as it's called, is typically about 2,000 milligrams a day. So you see a huge wide variance, so to speak. So one of the other things that we notice is a lot of people will use what is known as optimal daily intakes. A lot of nutritionalists and maybe some advanced thinking individuals say that we often need a lot more nutrients than what is recommended under the RDAs. So a lot of people will maybe focus on that and use that as a guideline to be able to get more nutrients into the system and ensuring that we have adequate amounts for things such as genetic differences and things of that nature. All right, so how are we stacking up when it comes to the United States? We've got food fortification, we've got enrichment. Hopefully you're eating a whole foods diet. Ultimately, when the dust settles, guess what? We are still lacking a lot of nutrients in our systems. Roughly 70% of Americans are not even getting 50% of the RDA for vitamin D. Roughly about 60% of Americans aren't getting what we call 50% again of the RDAs for vitamin E. And the list kind of goes on and on. In fact, there's a lot of different types of nutrients that we're lacking. So one of the things that we always recommend is that you add some type of a dietary supplement program to your regime to ensure that you're going to help with the nutritional gaps. Especially a lot of foods, when they're transported, they ultimately lose a lot of their vitamin content. Think about this. You eat apples year-round. Some of the apples that you get, maybe are grown in different types of countries, but the things that you're getting from Washington were picked in the fall. You might be eating in the spring or in the summer. The nutrient content on that is greatly diminished by the time that you get to it. So what happens when you're using a vitamin supplement, such as a multivitamin, it kind of helps to fill in the gaps for a lot of these nutrients that have a tendency to deplete. So we recommend on a regular basis that you're using a multivitamin to kind of ensure that you're getting enough of these nutrients that you might be lacking. So that kind of closes this series up as far as giving you some information about vitamins and minerals. My name is Starkey Sower. Thanks again for watching another Plus Program training series.